INFJs often move through the world in ways that most people don't fully understand. Their thoughts go deeper, their feelings run stronger, and their sense of awareness stretches beyond what's considered typical. This isn't just about being different. It's about seeing the world through a lens that many don't even know exists. Although INFJs are not officially labeled as neurodivergent, many of their behaviors align closely with what people recognize as neurodivergent traits. Their intensity, their need for alone time, their emotional depth, and their ability to hyperfocus are just a few signs of how their minds operate outside the norm. Because of this, INFJs are often misunderstood. People may call them overly sensitive, too intense, or difficult to figure out. But these traits are not flaws. They're part of a mental structure that is wired for something different, something rare, and sometimes something that can feel intimidating to others. This video will go through 6 powerful reasons why the neurodivergent nature of the INFJ can be seen as terrifying. Not because it's wrong or bad, but because it challenges what people expect. It forces others to confront emotional truths, hidden patterns, and social norms they've never questioned. The INFJ mind is not just different, it's built for depth, truth, and long-range thinking. And when that kind of mind shows up in a world focused on speed and surface, it's bound to shake things up. Reason number 1: intense pattern recognition. INFJs are not just intuitive, they're constantly watching, connecting, and reading into things on a level that most people can't see. Their minds are always searching for meaning behind the surface. What seems like a simple event to others might be filled with signals and implications to an INFJ. They don't just see what's happening, they see what's behind it and where it's likely to go. This intense form of pattern recognition comes from their dominant cognitive function, introverted intuition. It makes them natural detectives of people and situations. They can observe a small change in someone's tone, a shift in eye contact, or a hidden motive in a conversation, and they put those pieces together like a puzzle. Often, they reach conclusions before anyone else has even realized there's a problem. What makes this ability so unusual, and sometimes frightening to others, is how accurate it can be. INFJs will make a quiet prediction, and then weeks or months later, it happens. Not because they're guessing, but because they're reading the entire situation at a level most people ignore. This insight can be comforting to the people close to them, but it can also be unnerving. Some people feel exposed, as if the INFJ sees right through their mask. And the truth is, they probably do. INFJs aren't trying to uncover secrets, but they can't help noticing when something doesn't add up. It's also not limited to people. INFJs spot patterns in behavior, systems, trends, and even global events. They often sense big changes coming before there are clear signs. They might not always be able to explain how they know, but they feel it, and they're usually right. Because of this, INFJs can seem like they're thinking 5 steps ahead. They're always calculating, processing, and noticing. And if they choose to act on that insight, they can be incredibly strategic. That makes them effective, but also intimidating to anyone who underestimates them. This is one of the main ways INFJs experience the world differently. Their mind doesn't rest on the surface. It dives under, and what they find there gives them power. Not loud or aggressive power, but silent, insightful power. The kind that can change everything without ever raising its voice. To many people, this ability feels like a mystery. To the INFJ, it's just how their brain works. Reason number 2: emotional depth and empathy. INFJs don't just understand emotions, they absorb them. When someone is hurting, even if that person says nothing, the INFJ feels it. They pick up on unspoken pain, silent tension, and subtle energy shifts. It's like they have emotional radar that's always turned on. This kind of empathy can be a gift, but it also sets them apart in ways that are hard for others to understand. Most people deal with emotions at surface level. INFJs go to the root. They want to know why someone feels the way they do, what it connects to, and how to help. But doing that takes a lot of emotional energy. And the INFJ often gives more than they can afford. Because they feel so deeply, they often carry other people's emotions as if they were their own. A conversation with someone sad can leave them drained for the rest of the day. A toxic environment can make them physically tired. And when they don't get space to recover, it builds up. This emotional sensitivity can be overwhelming, but it also makes them incredibly aware. They see the emotional patterns in people's lives. They remember what others forget. They understand pain that hasn't even been named yet. Sometimes this makes others uncomfortable. When the INFJ speaks the emotional truth no one else wants to face, it can come off as too intense. People may say, "You're overthinking," or "It's not that deep," but for the INFJ, it really is. They don't choose to feel this much. It's part of who they are. In relationships, this depth can be both beautiful and complicated. INFJs give fully. They care in ways that can't be measured. But they also expect emotional honesty in return. If someone lies, withholds, or plays games, the INFJ senses it, and their trust fades fast. The terrifying part isn't that they care. It's that they care so much, even when it hurts. And if they're pushed too far, they shut down in a way that's final. Once the emotional door is closed, it usually doesn't open again. INFJs don't wear their heart on their sleeve. They carry it quietly, heavily, and with purpose. And once you see how deeply they feel, you realize they're not emotionally fragile. They're emotionally powerful. That kind of depth is rare, and that's exactly why it's often misunderstood and even feared. Reason number 3, perfectionism and high standards. INFJs often carry the weight of invisible expectations they set for themselves. These are not small goals or everyday goals. These are idealistic, detailed, often unrealistic standards that guide how they live, work, and interact with the world. At the core of their perfectionism is a deep desire to live with meaning and integrity. They don't want to just do okay. They want to do it right. They want their actions, words, and even thoughts to reflect their values. This can push them to achieve incredible things, but it can also exhaust them. This perfectionism doesn't always look like neat desks or color-coded calendars. It shows up in their need to say the right thing, to make the best choice, or to make sure everyone feels heard. INFJs don't just want to succeed, they want everything they do to align with something deeper. This creates pressure. A lot of it. They're often their own harshest critics. Even when others are praising them, the INFJ may be thinking, "I could have done better." They replay conversations. They second-guess decisions. They stress over details no one else noticed. And it doesn't stop with themselves. INFJs often apply high standards to others as well, not in a controlling way, but in a hopeful way. They believe in people's potential. They see what someone could be. So when people don't try, or when they act in ways that feel selfish or careless, the INFJ feels frustrated, sometimes even disappointed. This can cause tension in relationships. Others may feel judged or not good enough around the INFJ, even if that's not the INFJ's intention. They don't expect perfection from others, but they do expect honesty, effort and growth. When they don't see that, they pull back. Their perfectionism can also lead to burnout. INFJs may take on too much, try to meet every need, or feel like they must always hold it all together. They rarely ask for help. Instead, they keep pushing until something gives. This makes their neurodivergence difficult to spot from the outside. They seem calm, capable, and put together. But inside, they're often carrying a storm of self-pressure, responsibility, and silent stress. This intensity of standards, both inward and outward, isn't easy to manage. But it's part of why INFJs stand out. They don't settle, they don't cut corners. And while that can be admirable, it can also be terrifying to themselves and to those around them. Reason number 4, sensory sensitivities. INFJs may seem calm and collected in conversation, but their senses are often working overtime. They notice lights that are too bright, sounds that are too sharp, smells that are too strong. It's not about being picky, it's about how their nervous system reacts to sensory input. This is something many people don't realize about INFJs. They're not just emotionally sensitive, they're also physically sensitive to the world around them. Crowded spaces, busy environments, harsh lighting, or constant noise can wear them down fast. They may not always say something out loud, but it shows. They become quiet, tense, or withdrawn. They might leave early or avoid certain places entirely. It's not social anxiety, it's sensory overload. And once they're overstimulated, they need time alone to reset. This sensitivity can also show up in small ways. Clothing tags that itch, a slight change in someone's tone, the flicker of a fluorescent light. These things seem minor to others, but can completely throw off an INFJ's focus and comfort. For INFJs, being in control of their space is essential. They need calm surroundings to think clearly and stay balanced. That's why many of them design their environment carefully. Soft lighting, quiet music, organized spaces. It's not about aesthetics. It's about survival. This trait can make them seem distant or difficult to include in group settings. Others might not understand why they cancel plans, avoid loud events, or seem bothered by what feels normal. But these reactions aren't choices. They're responses to sensory input that the INFJ system processes with more intensity. Because of this, INFJs often seek out calm, slow-moving routines. They avoid chaos. They keep things simple, quiet, and intentional. And when they don't get that space, their stress builds, and their mental clarity fades. This sensory side of the INFJ experience is often overlooked, but it plays a big role in how they operate, how they relate to others, and how they protect their energy. It's another layer of their neurodivergence that shapes how they live each day. Reason number 5, deep focus and obsession. When an INFJ finds something that matters to them, they don't just show interest, they dive in. Fully. Their attention narrows, their energy sharpens, and their focus becomes almost tunnel-like. This isn't just passion, it's obsession. Obsession in the truest sense. They might stay up late reading, researching, or working on one idea. They might forget to eat or lose track of time. They might ignore texts, cancel plans, or pause everything else just to keep going. To someone on the outside, it might seem extreme, but to the INFJ, it's how they connect with meaning. This deep focus gives them a unique edge. When they're in that zone, they create things that are thoughtful, layered, and powerful. Whether it's writing, art, design, planning, or problem-solving, they bring full mental presence, and that level of intensity leads to incredible outcomes. But there's a cost. That obsession can lead to imbalance. Other parts of life get pushed aside. INFJs might stop sleeping well. They might avoid social interaction. They might burn out, especially if they don't build in breaks. This kind of focus can also make them appear distant. People may think the INFJ is ignoring them or pulling away, but really, their mind is just fully locked onto something that feels important. It's also hard for them to let go. Once they care about something, an idea, a cause, a person, they hold on. They keep thinking, keep planning, keep returning to it in their mind. This loyalty to a single focus can be powerful, but it can also trap them if they're not careful. Their obsession isn't about being dramatic. It's about being wired to care deeply and think fully. And when that focus hits, it takes over. In that moment, the INFJ's whole world becomes one idea. That intensity may be misunderstood, but it's part of what makes them extraordinary and far from ordinary. Reason number 6, social masking and burnout. INFJs are often seen as calm, kind, and easy to talk to. They usually know what to say, how to listen, and how to fit into different social settings. But what most people don't see is the mental work going on underneath. INFJs are often masking, adapting themselves to match what's expected, even if it doesn't feel natural. This masking is a form of survival. INFJs want peace, connection, and harmony. To maintain those things, they watch how others act, adjust their tone, control their emotions, and sometimes hide how overwhelmed they really are. On the surface, they seem fine, but inside, they're working overtime. They do this at work, at school, with friends, even with family. They read the room, hold back their real thoughts, and do whatever they can to avoid making others uncomfortable. Over time, this takes a serious toll. Eventually, INFJs hit a wall. It might not happen right away, but after enough masking, enough suppression, and enough pretending, they start to burn out. They feel tired all the time. They lose interest in things they love. They may become irritable, numb, or emotionally distant. This kind of burnout is hard to explain to others. People say things like, "But you're so calm," or "You always seem fine." But that's because they haven't seen the cost of all the quiet adjustments. They don't know how many times the INFJ has said yes when they wanted to say no, or smiled when they wanted to cry. The truth is, masking is exhausting. Some is exhausting. And for INFJs who already feel deeply and think constantly, it can be especially damaging. It separates them from their true self. It forces them to perform, even in private moments. And that's what makes it so terrifying. Because after a while, they can forget what being authentic even feels like. Recovery takes time. It means stepping back, setting boundaries, and letting go of the need to always be good. It means finding spaces and people where they don't have to pretend. And it means learning to trust that their real self is enough. The INFJ doesn't fit neatly into any box. Their mind is wired differently. They think deeper, feel stronger, and carry more than most people ever realize. And while that difference can make life harder, it's also what makes them powerful. Each trait we've explored, pattern recognition, empathy, high standards, sensory sensitivity, deep focus, and masking, is part of a mental framework that operates beyond the surface. It's not just about being unique, it's about experiencing life in a way that challenges what most people think is normal. That's why the INFJ's neurodivergence can be terrifying, not in a bad way, but in a way that forces others to pay attention. INFJs see what others ignore. They feel what others suppress. They live in a world that most people never explore. And that makes them hard to predict, hard to control, and hard to fully understand. But it also makes them needed. Because in a world that moves too fast, too loud, and too shallow, INFJs bring insight, depth, and quiet truth. They don't just exist, they reflect. They don't just react, they feel. And they don't just go with the flow, they shape it in subtle, lasting ways. If you're an INFJ, you might feel out of place. You might wonder why everything feels so intense, or why no one else seems to notice what you do. But that's not a weakness. It's the proof that you're wired differently, and that difference is your gift. So don't hide it, don't shrink it, don't change it to make others comfortable. The way your mind works might feel heavy at times, but it's also what makes you unforgettable.